What's up guys, Yoshi the Urio here. So today's video is going to be about someone by the name of OtterlyNoah, who comes off as woke or has elements of Marxism. At least that's what I think. This guy is based on his worldview and interpretations of movies. I don't know, the big glaring sign of focusing on a character's autism is kind of a dead giveaway for cultural Marxists. Because honestly, who focuses on characters' disabilities? As a diabetic, I don't necessarily gel with Turk from Scrubs simply because we're both type 2 diabetes and we take the same insulin brands. He has that same quirky energy that I have that breaks the progressive standards of being black, but at the same time knows when to tone that energy down to be more decisive. In any case, OtterlyNoah is a channel that spends more time talking about anti-woke grifters than focusing on the thing he loves most. And oftentimes my analysis of these types of channels, whether they be woke or anti-woke, all fall under the same category of I happen to participate in the culture war, but I also happen to dabble in a hobby of mine. Only for swaths of people to show up for the hate fest or drama videos, yet only a small number of people to show up for the things that interest them, which honestly, I'm trying my best to avoid. I don't want to be known by my audience as that person. I would prefer to be the guy who happens to participate in solving social issues, but also happens to dabble in the culture war. Because I feel like this label actually solves problems, while the other perpetuates them based on the YouTuber's political worldview and how they interpret things through that worldview. And honestly, this guy's video illustrates what I mean by that. So, TLDR, Matt Walsh came out with a video back in December of 2023 titled Matt Walsh explains why these movie villains were right. Now, if you've been on the internet as long as I have, this isn't the first time first time people make this kind of video. People often make videos like this justifying the actions of villains in media. However, coming from a person like Matt Walsh, you knew it would be more than just being an edgelord. I took the time to watch the video myself, which you can find in the description below, and to be honest, it's kinda cringe. Matt Walsh has a humor, or at least the editing, that's drier than Ben Stein saying Bueller over and over again. Like, if you took the time to analyze this video, it's clearly slapped together kind of content with some very retarded takes that the old movies of Disney were woke for some reason. Like, for instance, Bambi is pro-vegan propaganda for some reason.
One is Bambi.
Wake up, we have company.
Now, first of all, I've never met a child who actually likes this movie. I don't know anyone my age who liked Bambi growing up. Bambi is one of the weakest films in the Disney canon. And yet it's viewed as a classic because it happened to be released in the 40s, although it could have been released last year based on the fact that the villains in this movie are the hunters who shot Bambi's mom.
No hasty, careless shooting. There you are, fire away. Oh, good shot, boy, good shot.
But they were obviously entirely justified in doing so. First of all, because venison is delicious. Those hunters, I'm guessing, made some great venison steaks, maybe some deer jerky out of Bambi's mom, which is a fact that could have brought Bambi some comfort and solace if anyone had explained it to him, but they never did. Second, deer populations are out of control in this country. Like, they wreak havoc in ecosystems. They cause 1.5 million car crashes a year, including hundreds of fatalities. So deer hunters are performing a service, and yet they've been villainized in a movie that generations of bored children have been forced to watch. Think about this. If Bambi's mom had not been shot and killed, she may have gone on to run into the road one night, causing a family returning home from dinner to veer off into a tree.
I didn't take that when I first saw it, and to be honest, the movie made me appreciate deer meat even more. And he tries to spin it in some kind of white collectivist responsibility of population control. I mean, the dude literally shows a clip of a white family dying from a car crash because a deer ran across the road. Not gonna lie, this video did kind of come off like white nationalist propaganda, disguised as critiquing the woke, because there is really nothing woke or Marxist in what he's presenting. So you could say it's to carry white nationalist beliefs. I'm surprised Noah didn't mention that or argue against that. Probably because he agrees with it in kind of a way. Because the issue with leftists like Noah is that he won't call a spade, because if he did, he would have to acknowledge that he too is using a spade. Both Noah and Matt have come to the conclusion of recognizing racial consciousness and being aware of it. The difference between the two is that Matt's consciousness is more nationalistic. You know, whites are the best, should run the nations, are the only ones that can actually get the job done. While Noah seems more internationalistic, just take what I said earlier and replace white with person of color. Same thing, same energy, different races. Noah's critique on Matt's video, which Noah posted on June 19th of 2025, shows exactly the political division that we're facing is two-handed, as opposed to this fictional fairy tale that all the good people are over on this side and all the bad people are on this side. Remember, it takes two hands to build something, but it takes two hands to break the thing that was built and the people who built it. I'm going to go over both of their videos and show you exactly how Noah's and Matt's analysis hides the actual meaning of these movies, as they paint over them with their worldviews, with both of them staining these timeless classics with their political Marxist-tinted filth.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
It jumped up a notch.
It did, didn't it?
We'll start off with one of the segments, which is Pocahontas. I remember watching this movie in elementary school, with the lights off and that giant strapped-down CRT TV VCR combo set on wheels. Now, when I was a kid, what I got from this movie was this was a typical love story where love conquers the major indifferences of two cultures, where you have Pocahontas meeting John Smith. The two meet as John goes exploring in the wilderness and finds her. The two constantly meet with each other in secret, slowly falling in love, only to realize that their love won't last because of their factions that they serve, the natives versus the settlers. After some back and forth, the two make up with a passionate interracial kiss that these two seem to obfuscate with their political back and forth. But don't worry, because Coco, with his smooth peanut butter complexion, arrives. Upset that the white man is stealing their women, enforces segregation in a heated race war.
Oh shit, here we go! It's on! Race war!
After showing he hates John for trying to slide into her tent, more than loving his own skin color, a settler from Ratcliffe's crew saves John. John orders Thomas to leave, forcing John to take the blame of killing one of their own tribemen. Ratcliffe receives news from Thomas that John was kidnapped by the tribe, which gives Ratcliffe the justification to commence war. Like Obama said, never let a good crisis go to waste. After a striking musical number that would fit perfectly in a musical segment for Birth of a Nation, Pocahontas flees to save John, stopping the chief from killing him. After Ratcliffe's men realizes that the others didn't want a race war. Apparently these two do, because it's not part of their political worldview as a talking point against each other. Ratcliffe seizes the means of production and takes aim to kill their chief, only for John to take the bullet instead. Thomas grows some balls, Ratcliffe is arrested for being too white, the others exchange gifts for John's bravery and Pocahontas' love for John, and the two separate. Now, let's look at these two.
The villains in this movie are the evil white Europeans who are portrayed as brutal, greedy barbarians, oppressing the innocent Native Americans who are all kind and generous and so in touch with nature that they can literally talk to the trees.
Good morning, child.
We talk about wokeness in Disney films. This was the beginning of Disney's long march into wokeness.
Okay, so no, quote-unquote wokeness is not the thing that destroyed Disney's Pocahontas and made it an undesirable film. The reason why Pocahontas is bad, in addition to all the major historical inaccuracies in the film, is because it's just such a boring film overall. This film was specifically designed as Oscar bait. Jeffrey Katzenberg, while still at Disney at the time, had seen the success of Beauty and the Beast and wanted to be able to make another film that could get nominated for Best Picture, like that one had. Because of that, he made the most bland white savior story ever that is rooted in actual American history but has pretty much no real history to it at all, since it includes a lot of weird magical things that still make it feel like a Disney movie, which is pretty odd. And what do you know, the film didn't get nominated for Best Picture and was a lot less financially successful than The Lion King had been the year before. Funny how that works. So, no, wokeness did not ruin Pocahontas at all. The lame pursuit of an Oscar over trying to make a well-developed story is what killed it. You can't just look at a piece of media, see a person of color in it, and call it woke. That's not real criticism. You have to look at storytelling, pacing, characterization, cinematography, all those things that really make a film a film. That's ultimately what you should look at when criticizing a film, not this.
So you could argue that march began with the vegetarian propaganda of Bambi, but in any case, the white settlers in reality were courageous and intrepid pioneers, not villains.
Not really, because if you look at a lot of the things the white settlers did, a lot of their actions towards the Native Americans could be seen as just straight up villainous. When Roman Catholics arrived in America, they would force their religion on American Indians and not allow them to preserve their own culture and religion. A lot of Native Americans were also just sold into slavery and abused. There really isn't glazing over a lot of the atrocities that happened around this time in history. But apparently Matt Walsh would like to do so in order to convince you that the white settlers that came to America were all total heroes and none of them did anything wrong. Yeah, sure, whatever you say, buddy.
This is a perfect example of people formulating their arguments around things they want people to say as opposed to what they're saying. In this segment, he mentions how Matt Walsh is trying to justify the actions of John Ratcliffe as a villain. While in context of the video topic, justifying the actions of villains, Matt Walsh doesn't really focus on John Ratcliffe himself, but rather the settlement as a whole, treating them as a collective of sorts. As much as he is wrong on his analysis of calling Pocahontas woke, he does the woke thing and collectivizes the white settlers as one consciousness, including John Ratcliffe, who is quite literally the villain, which by his analysis makes all the settlers villains. I can see why people took this offensively, with Matt blending real-world events with kids' movies. Matt does look like the type of person who sings savages in his study when he's bored. Then this is where Noah comes in, forming his argument on the one character he never mentioned, when you can clearly dismiss his entire argument by saying he never mentioned the villain in the first place. This part of Matt's video kind of comes off like padding for like 10-minute mark for ad revenue considering it's 12 minutes, and the rest of the video has some really cringe takes. Now for you. First of all, Pocahontas is not supposed to be historically accurate, and if you're looking for historical accuracy from a children's movie, trying to teach children not to judge people on surface value, or the actions of one rogue is not the actions or intentions of everyone who looks like them, I can see why you have a hard-on for autistic characters. I have nothing to say of the information from your behind the scenes in your video discussing this particular film. However, you clearly show your worldview by calling the movie a white savior film, which isn't the case, and shows your leftist Marxist worldview, the thing Matt is criticizing and failing hard. This is why I don't tolerate people like you, Matt and Noah, because you people form their arguments around your collectivist worldviews instead of watching the goddamn movie. That is quite literally free on YouTube. Because if you watch the movie, you would understand it's trying to promote the idea that love transcends hate, and that oftentimes, fights break out from misunderstandings. But given the nature of both your videos, good news doesn't trend, so you have to remove the positive messaging from the movie, like the actions of one is not representative of many. And oftentimes, war is started by a radicalized person taking advantage of a crisis. The first two of which, none of you lead with your mention or mention with, meaning that's something you really don't value. But you both carry out the last part, taking advantage of a crisis. You both unironically exemplify Ratcliffe's worldview. We are all good, they are all bad. This is why at times I often do feel like this is just people like you working together, and a cat and dog like action to create a smokescreen where people take sides. Only at the end of the day for you two working together in the smoke to screw everyone over who picked the side. Notice how despite me inserting my political worldview, it didn't transform the story in any way. Some jabs here and there for some comedic effect, but nothing too jarring to the point where I transform the movie and everyone is magically anarcho-capitalistic. However, when it comes to the both of you, your lens often reshapes the narrative of the whole movie, either painting the whites as good guys and the browns as bad, or vice versa. And while I agree with your segment that Marxism didn't kill Pocahontas, because honestly, there is no Marxism in the film, and that the film was more than likely made for admiration rather than inspiration. However, you keep leaning on defending non-white people when the man never said anything disparaging about natives in the first place. This overdosing on empathy kinda makes it seem like you're really guilty of something, and you don't want people to know. Just like how Mr. Beast does all these great things around the world, only to be outed for hiring a pedophile. And unlike most black people, or the racist term, person of color, for the love of Christ, do not call me that, in your neck of the political spectrum, seeing how you're guilty for being white, how about you transfer all your wealth and belongings to me and go live on the streets? Since you're white and guilty and all that. And if you're not, you're just self-hating, and it's pretty nauseating. Because unlike them, I don't march along my fucking enemy and call my actions equal and just. The violence between the two settlers and Native Americans can typically be argued on cultural differences, and how one party was a progressive developing capitalist nation going against the conservative traditional Marxist-like practice of land ownership, coupled with the religious differences, one being Christianity and the other being pagan. The two were bound to have some form of conflict one way or another. And clearly this wasn't going to be something where the two can just work it out and live in harmony with one another. Because if you understand culture in a society, one is a majority and the other is the minority, and the ruling majority shapes that society. If the settlers lived like the natives, that would be a downgrade, and them not only going against God for serving paganism, but their government, which at that point would make them thieves, if they are settled just like the natives, kept the government's property, thus giving the justification to kill them and enslave the remaining people. But if the natives lived like the settlers, that would be considered an upgrade. And conflicting issue is people are stuck in their ways. This idea of violence is often just an attempt to rewrite the losers in wars with as much sympathy as possible, when in fact, its petty revisionism only adds more bitterness in the mouths and a stain on their dignity. That if brown people are going to lose the white people, at least sweeten the deal. That way, generations later on, the brown people can tell each other's generation of children that they got all the best land and the best living conditions for being brown and losers. I really hate today's progressive think logic of everyone gets first place, even the losers. I don't know, man. I think the natives got the last laugh with these casinos, and it shows the benefits of natives assimilating into American culture. I mean, look who got the last laugh. Then there's his segment with Rev. Now, the trick this man did here is pretty dirty. And the trick what he did is that he shows the original and remake versions of Ramna 1.5, claiming people says it's woke, doesn't give examples, and then pivots that into Rev.
This has definitely seen a huge uptick in recent memory with the growth of these kinds of channels and also the growth of anime as a huge, massively popular art form. There's been things like people saying the Ramna 1/2 remake is quote-unquote woke because of the fact that Akane says she hates men in the show.
How many times do I have to keep telling you that it doesn't matter because I hate men?
Which is funny because if you look at the original show, she said the same exact thing there. Funny that nobody called it woke then, huh? Probably one of the most notable examples of an anti-woke critic who often cracks down on anime and calls that woke is none other than Rev Says Desu, an anti-woke VTuber.
Who clearly has never made a video saying Ramna 1.5 is woke. Like, my guy, you couldn't just do a YouTube search with Ramna 1.5 and woke and got Night's Watch, Sunlets, and Drin's Beard as search results? I don't even know any of these people, and yet you didn't bring up a single one of these guys. Anyways, he pivots into another topic because, honestly, he's clearly one of those anti-lollies, and he really couldn't argue around Rev's points on ReZero because there is none, so he has to make one up. I watch Rev a lot, and to be honest, to say Rev would call Renma 1.5 woke, you know, the guy who defends lolly characters based on the source material and not your feelings, is rather disingenuous. The man knows the difference between a transgender person and a person with the magical powers to transform between genders. And honestly, he would recommend this anime, the original and the remake. Noah then goes to say that the people like ReZero not for the lolly designs, but because it's unique isekai, which was not Rev's point.
too long ago, when the third season of the acclaimed anime ReZero came out, he ended up doing a video on that and claiming that was woke too. Specifically, he found it woke due to some censorship that was found in the anime itself, so let's take a look at what he had to say.
Let's talk about the actual censorship, the real changes that are very observable with this third season trailer. And it's pointed out by users like this saying, as the observant among light novel / web novel readers may have noticed, they have indeed censored both Capella's and Liliana's designs. Liliana's now features a sports bra and shorts rather than the skimpy bikini, and Capella's bra and bikini bottom also being made more modest. And here's a more up-close design of this third season trailer of the character Capella, and you can see they added a sports bra versus the bikini that she was wearing. Now, of course, this is a lolly character, so when people on Twitter see censorship of lolly characters, they cheer. And of course, as we always point out, that is a slippery slope, okay? When you start excusing censorship of things you personally don't like or find weird, it often continues until it starts censoring things that you do care about. It's a very slippery slope.
Because I'm pretty sure most people who like ReZero don't like it for lolly designs. That is such a weird and honestly kind of disturbing thing to single out about the show. I think most people who like ReZero just like it because it's a really unique isekai and has a really interesting protagonist too. Subaru Natsuki is honestly one of the most unique anime protagonists out there. He has an incredibly unique character arc too, starting off as a really selfish NET who ends up being transported into a isekai world. And because of this, he sees this as an easy avenue for him to try to get the life he thinks he deserves since he never got that back on Earth. However, after living in this new fantasy world for not too long at all and also dying multiple times over and over, he quickly finds out that's not the case here. And this really causes him to have to look at himself and just change who he is. Not try to change his environment around him or try to change the minds of people around him. It's incredibly deep storytelling like that and really great world building too that I think a lot of people like ReZero for, and also fan favorite characters like Rem, of course. Also, ReZero is one of the most faithful adaptations as well from its source material. So far, ReZero has not adapted all the light novels that it's based on yet, but for what it has adapted so far, it's honestly been really faithful to the source material. So, to be honest, I think that's really all people care about when it comes to an adaptation. They just want to see it faithfully retold. And ReZero is a really well done page-to-screen adaptation, so I think that's all people really care about. I don't think they care about quote-unquote censorship at all. Or at the very least, when it comes to anything outside of the core story. Honestly, I don't think them censoring this character is a bad thing at all, and honestly, it's still kind of uncomfortable to look at too, even like this. Personally, I think they should have censored this even more, but admittedly, this character is supposed to be very uncomfortable in the show, so that is obviously intentional.
Rev understands most people don't like lollies. His point was, you shouldn't censor this kind of stuff because what's offensive today sets the standard tomorrow. And then that standard becomes hypersexualization, and then that gets replaced with the new standard, and then so on and so forth. This is what I'm talking about with people like this. They won't argue against what you're saying, but instead hyperfixate on one word and form their entire argument around one word, or make up their own argument without ever addressing the slippery slope or what is actually being said. Then later on, you contradict yourself, saying people want to see the story retold, yet at the same time, you support censorship of the story and its elements. You even said it yourself that the character is supposed to be disturbing, yet you want it changed. Rev is talking about people like you and Matt Walsh. People like you who come into our space, coming into these spaces, changing everything because you can't fucking handle it. Covering up biological women or reducing their bust and butt sizes, only to transfer those assets to men or women who want to be men. Then people like Matt Walsh comes in, feed on the bullshit your people insert on demand, and say that this is the stuff you people are trying to feed to their children, hypersexual content. And when you people don't get your way, you want it gone as well, the same way as Matt Walsh wants it gone, regardless if it's being censored or not. See how you feed each other? Censorship takes away from the core of the story, whether you see it or not. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it doesn't change the story, which is pretty retarded. It's like saying I don't like Malcolm X in glasses, so removing them is fine. In fact, it looks better. To you. However, removing details like that changes the overall perspective on first glances when it comes to Malcolm X. With the glasses, you get this sense of a man that is a cut above the rest. Complemented with his posture, he seems to be a lot more than your typical intellectual. Take the glasses away, he's just a typical civil rights activist on first glance. Taking away details in any form of entertainment or history is how people's perception is changed. In this case with ReZero, because that character's design was censored, the person who would find that disgusting will find the next best thing disgusting. And then the one after that, and then the one after that. That's how censorship works in a weaponized manner. This idea of, well, it doesn't affect me, so whatever, is stupid. Because at the end of the day, it will affect you. And what you put in place will be taken advantage by people like Matt Walsh. And he'll come for your shit. And then you'll go, what? What's wrong with my favorite anime? Gosh darn these religious right people. We need to ban the Bible if this is how they're going to play things. And let's be honest, based on your worldview, you would say and do that. Because you don't see censorship as a means of protection, you use it as a tool of spite. Just like how Matt Walsh uses censorship so that his anti-woke idiots under him can sell their shitty-ass comic books that aren't selling because they can't compete against anime. Because being known as the guy who participate in the culture war, only to sorta happen and find out that he's also a writer by chance, is just as worse of a fate than being a writer who happens to dabble within the culture war. Those are very two different worldviews.
But really, censorship or not, it doesn't take away from the core story, so I'm not really sure why Rev is getting upset about this here.
Not to mention the fact that if you're going to be complaining about this stuff, she is still very raunchy. I mean, this is the censor design. She's practically wearing booty shorts with visible thong lines right here.
Huh, interesting. So then why are you still complaining about it, Rev? Seems kinda pointless he made this whole video on it then. If ReZero Season 3 had made drastic changes to the story and also censored things from the actual novel in its writing, I think that would definitely be something to complain about, but they didn't do that. It's still a really faithful page-to-screen adaptation, as it's always been, so I don't really see what there is to complain about here at all. Rev seems very intent at trying to sell the idea that ReZero is clearly being ruined by woke activists now, because now one character is slightly more censored than before. When, no, this really isn't the case. It's still the same story as it was before. Censoring a character's design doesn't really take away from that.
And we've seen this type of global standard and also other standards being forced upon, in particular, artists and Japanese artists. Look what happened through these payment processors. Look what that's done to places like Patreon. Remember back in the day, one of the first things in terms of fictional content that Patreon banned was lolly-related content. Well, look at them now. Patreon recently, we talked about this in a very recent video, they are now requiring artists who make not safe for work content to provide affirmative consent between fictional characters that they put in not safe for work situations. That's how ridiculous it has gone. It keeps getting worse and worse.
No, I think those guidelines should pretty much be in place on Patreon since they don't want to encourage disgusting behavior. I honestly find that pretty reasonable to enforce on the artist.
Check out the big brain on Brad. You're a smart motherfucker, that's right.
Again, Rev is really just fixating on a character design than looking at the greater scope.
Not pointless, numbnuts. Censorship is pointless. Even after being censored, it's still not enough. How do people not understand this? Oh right, it doesn't happen to them, so... And if it does, they'll just move on to the next trendy thing and fuck that up too. When you have people like Collective Shout that push this kind of stuff, an organization that is quite literally breaking the ethics of tackling CP, with CP and children photos on their website articles, telling you where you can find it, this is why Rev and many others like myself fight against this crap. Banning and censoring this stuff just sounds like the cries of actual pedophiles who are upset that their actual illegal content that violates the bodily autonomy of children who cannot consent is not considered normal, comparative to lolly, which are devices with no bodily autonomy. So, if their kink isn't considered normal, no one's kink is normal. That's the kind of energy Collective Shout represents. No one is telling you to like and consume lolly. Just go somewhere else. But this notion of entering a space and demanding it to change to your perspective is just colonization at a consumer level. And you of all people should know about colonization. Seems like you can't put it down. Like, honestly, what makes you different from Matt Walsh? You're just him, just with a rainbow-colored beard. What sense does it make for a payment processor to dictate what you can and cannot buy unless it's illegal and violates the bodily autonomy of its citizens to even create CP to begin with? This take from Rev isn't criticism of ReZero, it's criticism of the market structure around ReZero. These critiques of yours is just you sniffing your own farts, when the discussion in Rev's video has nothing to do with the story. Like, holy straw man, are you high on Scarecrow's gaslighting gas or something? It's like you're going out your way to protect Collective Shout, who quite literally has child sex dolls on their website, which is a red flag, as well as the image of the real girl next to the sex doll, which is also another red flag. God, you're like these dumbasses that protect Islam because they're traumatized by bad Christians, and despite knowing their religion practices child marriage and condones it, they still protect them because they're non-Christian, or they're non-white, or they hate the Jews. And if you're familiar with theology, that is what most people are doing who are not familiar with theology. And they're just like fucking drunk on the damn Kool-Aid of their political worldviews. You can check the rest of his video in the description. I just wanted to cover these two subjects in his video, and I didn't want to, like, this video to be any longer with all this fucking brain rot. The funny thing about covering anti-woke slop is that it falls under the same trap as critiquing the anti-woke slop. There is no demand for you to be credible or thorough with your analysis, which makes your work is equal to their slop. Just pay attention to this man's video and you'll see he makes a lot of disingenuous cuts and tricks. And if I was able to spot these, there's no telling how many videos he has of this disgusting edits this man actually has in his other videos to prove a point, without ever engaging with the point. Like the video, dislike the video, and I'll see you next time. Peace.